Hi everyone, I'm Miss Eden and today we're going to make Garibaldi biscuits. These are a really simple, sweet, delicious biscuit that contain raisins and they're perfect for this time of year. So let's make a big batch and share them with our loved ones. The ingredients are going to be on the screen for you now.
You will need 110 grams of caster sugar, 110 grams of butter or margarine, 1 free-range egg, 225 grams of plain flour, a quarter of a teaspoon of mixed spice, 55 grams of raisins or sultanas, an optional 30 grams of candied peel, and up to 3 tablespoons of milk.
So the very first thing we're going to do is of course wash our hands, sanitise our surfaces, get an apron on, put our hair up and prepare our ingredients. And collectively this is known as mise en place, or get ready for practical in French. And of course we need to preheat our oven, so we're going to set it at 160 degrees Celsius or gas mark 3. And of course this is very low, but we're actually going to cook them low and slow. We only want them to be just golden brown, very, very pale indeed. So we can do that now. The very first thing we're going to do is add our sugar and our margarine or butter at room temperature in together in a large bowl, and this method is called creaming. So I'm going to pop the sugar in, I'm going to pop the margarine in, and now we're going to really work these together. I'm going to really mash it around. Now I like to actually use the back of the spoon as much as possible to really press it together. Notice how I try and keep it in one edge of the bowl and I'm not pushing it all up the sides. By doing so, I have to scrape down the sides later. Let's try and keep it in one area. Now you'll know when it's creamed together successfully because you won't feel or hear that granular, sandy kind of crunching from the sugar anymore, because it's actually combined entirely with the margarine. And now you can see why we call it the creaming method. It looks like a fluffy cream. Now we're going to add the egg. Now some people will actually crack their eggs on the side of the bowl, and well, that's reasonable to do when you're at home. If you work in the catering industry, that's actually not something that they do. And the reason being is that on the outside of the egg is the salmonella bacteria. Now they wash the eggs in the factory, so the risk is very low. But if you are cracking eggs all day, because that's your job, you want to reduce the risk even further. So the way that we do it properly is I'm going to hold the egg, going to nestle it in my hand. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to put it in my left hand. I'm going to take my knife, I'm going to use the back of my knife. I'm going to give it one good hit. If you hit it multiple times, it will break the shell and you're more likely to have shell in your food. So, one good hit. Using my thumbs to pull the shell apart, and in it goes. Now I'm going to add the egg into the creamed mixture. Make sure you scrape down the sides of the bowl as you go to keep all the mixture in. There we go. So my mixture looks smooth and creamy and ready for the flour. So now we're going to fold the flour in. I'm going to actually remove my wooden spoon, which is great for beating mixture, but for folding flour in, we don't really want to use it because this is like a ballerina and this is like an elephant. We want to keep what little air we've actually got into our biscuits, and we don't really want to beat it in with that. So, take my flour. I'm going to do about half at a time, like so. And I'm using a figure of 8 motion to fold it in. Go. So I'm just going to keep scraping the sides down and lifting all the flour off the bottom of the bowl as well, using my figure of 8 motion. That's coming along. Let's add the other half. So my dough looks perfect just like that. Now we can add our extra ingredients. So the next thing we're going to add is some mixed spice, and we're going to add 1/4 of a teaspoon. Now I only have a 1/2 teaspoon measure, so I'm going to have to try and work it out. That looks about right. Lovely. We're going to add our currants, and if you have candied peel you can add that as well. In this case I've just got currants. And I'm going to mix them all in and fold them in until they're well combined. So the mixed spice and the currants or the raisins are combined. I can smell that mixed spice as well. Lovely. Now we're going to add up to 3 tablespoons of milk. Well, we're aiming for a stiff dough. I would add a tablespoon at a time. It's going to vary depending on what fat you added, whether you had butter or margarine, low-fat spread, whatever the case was. So, I'm going to take my tablespoon measure. I've got coconut milk because I'm dairy intolerant, and we know when we have a full tablespoon because it's level, like so. I'm going to add that in, and I'm going to stir it again. So 1 tablespoon was plenty for me. You may not even need any. Just make sure that it's the right consistency, which is a stiff dough. Should be able to hold its own weight. It's still sticky, still very pliable like Play-Doh, but it's stiff. Now we can get to rolling it out.
We'll need to have some flour ready in order to be able to flour the surface, and this will keep our biscuit from sticking, and we'll need to flour the top of it as well, and our rolling pin. Whenever you lift and move the biscuit dough, always make sure that you are reflouring it. So here I'm just drawing the rolling pin back, being very gentle and turning the dough. You want to keep it moving because if it sticks when you try and lift your biscuits from the surface, you won't be able to. I'm just using the weight of the rolling pin. I'm not actually pressing very hard at all. Just reflouring to make sure that my rolling pin doesn't stick and pick dough up as it goes. Just the weight of the rolling pin. There we go.
So now comes the fun part. We get to cut our shapes out. We should have a tray ready and floured. And we can get some fun cookie cutter shapes. And if you don't have any of those, you can actually make do with a cup or glass. So I'm going to do a variety of shapes. And of course, remember, never cut straight out the middle. Where do we start? At the edge, of course we do. So I'm going to start right at the edge and press down. Give it a little wiggle. There we go. Beautiful. Let's do another one. See how many I can fit on here. Oh no! Now to transfer them across, we can just lift them up with our fingers, because our dough should be firm enough to do so. But if we're struggling, we can use a palette knife or a fish slice, like so. There we go. Transfer them across. So, once you have put all your biscuits on your tray, of course we can get the remainder of the dough, and we're going to roll that all over again. These look so cute, and now ready to put them in the oven. So they're going to need 15 to 20 minutes in the oven. Remember, we want them to be very, very pale golden brown. We don't want them to be dark at all. So 15 minutes in the oven, and then you need to check them. They might need an additional 5, so see you back then. And of course, this is the perfect time to get your washing up done and clear your surfaces. So they've come out of the oven, and you can see they are still very pale indeed, and that's how they should look. They're only just golden on the edges, but they're firm to the touch. They're not soggy on the bottom. So now we can transfer them across to our cooling rack. Some of these little guys came out a little bit wonky, but do you know what? I like them better for it. It's our imperfections that make us who we are. I'm really pleased with how these turned out. They look and smell wonderful, and very crunchy. I like them a lot. Now, the one thing you do need to keep in mind, guys, is that for each of these biscuits, if you make about 24, there's 1.5 teaspoons of sugar in each one. And remember, of course, we should be limiting ourselves to 6 teaspoons a day, so we don't really want to eat more than 1 or 2. So I hope you've enjoyed making this with me today. I'll see you next time.